So, let me tell you this story. It's about what happens when you throw AI, human psychology, and a high-stakes corporate board meeting into a blender. And trust me, the results were, well, pretty explosive.
Just start with this quote. Imagine you're a consultant. You share a data summary with a board, and this is the feedback you get from one of the members. They're not just unhappy, they're calling the ideas offensive. But here's the wild part. A person didn't even write the summary.
And that's the big mystery we're going to try and solve here. How on earth can a video summary, something created by a supposedly neutral AI, trigger such a raw, visceral human reaction? Well, to figure that out, we actually need to take a step back and understand how a good consultant reads a room. See, before any training or coaching can even get off the ground, a smart consultant has to figure out the mindset of the people they're about to work with. It's step one, the absolute foundation. You can't just throw a ton of information at people and expect them to get it. It just doesn't work that way. For knowledge to actually stick and grow into a skill, it needs fertile ground. And that ground is a person's fundamental attitude. The really interesting part, according to our source for this story, is that this core attitude, it doesn't really change. So the framework they use to figure this out is the Dunning-Kruger effect. Now, you've probably heard of it. It's not just about people thinking they're better at things than they are. The consultant here uses it more broadly, as a kind of lens. The real idea is that some people just lack the self-awareness to see their own blind spots. And that right there is a massive indicator of how open they'll be to feedback.
This whole assessment basically sorts people into two different buckets. First, you've got the owners. These are the people who are candid, they're straight shooters, and they take personal responsibility. That's a total green light for coaching. You can work with them. On the other side, you have who the author of our source material bluntly calls fools. His definition is fascinating. He says a fool is someone who believes a person's basic attitude can be changed. He argues that this view actually implies a lack of personal ownership and is a huge red flag for making any real progress.
But here's where it gets a little more tricky. Even if you have the right attitude, even if you're an owner, that's not a magic bullet. We all have these built-in flaws in how we communicate.
And this is a really crucial point. Even the most responsible, open-minded people are still, human. We can't help it. We instinctively filter the world around us, and that creates all these hurdles for clear communication and real understanding.
And these filters usually fall into three big categories. First, we generalize. We take one specific thing that happened and make it a universal rule. Second, we delete. We just conveniently ignore information that doesn't quite fit with what we already believe. And third, we distort. We twist what we see and hear to match our own story. A big part of a consultant's job is just trying to get past these three hurdles to see what's really going on. So, that raises a pretty cool question, right? What if you could just bypass all those human filters? Just get rid of them entirely? Well, this is where the AI comes back into our story. Not just as a tool, but as a fascinating experiment in pure, objective observation.
So, at this organization, Crossroads Colony, a consultant decided to try something new. They brought in an AI tool called Gemini to see what it would find. And yep, this is the very experiment that brings us right back to that offensive video from the beginning.
The AI's task was pretty straightforward. The input? 5 full years of the board of directors' own meeting minutes, all of their own words. The process? Gemini analyzed all of that text, looking for patterns, themes, key decisions, the whole shebang. The output? A single video summarizing everything it discovered. Now, this next detail is absolutely key. The consultant shared this video summary anonymously. They didn't say, hey, here's what I think, or here's what the AI thinks. They just popped the video onto the board's web portal and asked for feedback on the content itself. They just let it speak for itself, which is exactly what set the stage for that powerful reaction.
Okay, so this is where it all clicks into place. You've got the emotional reaction, the human communication flaws, and the objective eye of the AI. So what happened? Why did that board member find the video so incredibly offensive?
Well, let's be crystal clear about something. The AI, Gemini, has no agenda, it can't be offended, and it has no ability to try to offend someone. It has no feelings, no biases, no history with anyone in that room. It's just a tool for processing information. That's it. Every single idea, every conclusion, every little point that was in that offensive video summary, it was all pulled directly from the board's own recorded history. It wasn't someone's interpretation. It was a reflection based purely on the data that they themselves had created over 5 years.
And this right here is the core insight. The AI wasn't acting like a critic, passing judgment. It was acting like a mirror. A perfect, completely unfiltered mirror. Remember those 3 human communication flaws? Generalize, delete, and distort? The AI doesn't do any of that. It just showed them exactly what was there.
So that powerful emotional reaction, it wasn't really about the AI at all. It was the shock of seeing their own collective patterns and decisions laid bare, without the usual human filters we all use to soften reality a bit. It was a reaction to the raw, uncomfortable truth of their own data.
And this is the ultimate payoff. It brings us completely full circle. The AI didn't just create a report, it accidentally created the perfect test for that owner versus fool assessment. Because when you're faced with an unfiltered truth, a mirror, how do you react? An owner sees the reflection, takes responsibility, and asks, okay, so what can we learn from this? But someone with a different mindset, they don't see a reflection, they see an attack, and they find it offensive.
And that leaves all of us with a pretty provocative question to chew on. Imagine you turned a tool like this on your organization, or your team, or heck, even on your own emails for the last 5 years. If an AI held up a perfect, unfiltered mirror to you, what would you see? And maybe more importantly, how would you react?